everyone, and welcome to another Bite, where we rewatch the most innovative and intriguing pitches from Shark Tank. I'm Jorie, and I'm joined by the amazing, the astounding, the authentic Ariel.
Hey, everyone.
You know, I also once tried to start an online bakery, but I accidentally deleted all my cookies. As the saying goes, when life gives you lemons, toss them out and make cookies instead. And that's exactly what these founders did. Will the sharks bite, or will this pitch crumble? More to come after this brief snack break. Today in the tank, we have Nowhere Bakery, and Nowhere Bakery is brought to us by Safrina and Maurizio. And they are asking for $200,000 for 5% in their business, which is $4 million. Yep. Now, their problem that they're solving for is that some people honestly just have allergies that mean that they can't eat your typical good desserts. So we're talking gluten allergies, soy allergies, egg allergies, dairy allergies. You got the gamut. Their solution is plant-based desserts that also taste great. So enter Nowhere Bakery, which is a line of specialized cookies and brownies that are free of dairy, eggs, gluten, soy, refined sugar, and paleo-friendly, just to name a few.
It's like all in one cookie.
All in one cookie, indeed. So thinking about our pitch, our product, and our founders, Ariel, initial thoughts of Nowhere Bakery.
Yeah, so we were chatting about this before the call. I think their visual branding and imagery, they've really kind of nailed. They have this very clean, crumble-esque kind of aesthetic going for them. I think the problem that they're trying to solve, maybe I'm a little bit more biased as someone who has a peanut allergy. So
Fair.
I'm always looking for alternatives that don't have any cross-contamination.
Sure.
So I'm in this category of wanting to have foods that I feel like, won't cause any like allergic reactions. Yeah, that are safe.
Yeah.
Just a matter of pricing that it comes down for me. Everyone has a different price that they're willing to kind of settle for. I think what the challenge is, and that we see with a lot of baked goods or packaged goods, is like you reach this point where you have so much success from like whether it's an organic means or through community means or word of mouth. And then you get to this point where you're like, okay, how do I actually scale this business? Or how do I transition from being the head chef or the head baker into like the CEO or like a co-founder type role where I'm looking at like business statements and making strategic decisions. And I think roles. This is exactly the point where this company is at right now, because their sales are pretty decent.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so they almost have like exponential growth. They said that they started this entire company with $400 and they made $82,000 in 2020. That was up to $524,000 by 2021.
Good American capitalism story.
So by the end of 2024, they're like projecting $1 million.
It's amazing.
Do you think there is actually any way to scale further than they have in this space? Or do you actually think that like, nope, $1 million in sales in paleo-friendly cookies is the best you're going to get?
I mean, I think they said it was almost like $2 the cost to make for some of their goods, and they're like selling them for $6. So like they have some pretty strong margins.
Yeah.
They have a number of different SKUs that they're introducing. So they could either lean in more into like product expansion, so like coming up with new items. But I think at this point, the sales really do speak for themselves.
Okay. We breezed by the fact that these are $6 a cookie and they're selling it for a dozen. Yeah. You said that like it was the most normal thing.
It's expensive.
If we net this out, right?
Yes.
They're selling it in like 6 packs, which, okay, $36.
That's a lot for cookies.
Yeah. You start to get in these 12 and 14 packs and it is $80+ per transaction, which is
a luxury cookie.
It's a luxury cookie. Okay. Yes, exactly. So maybe some red flags for some of us, maybe some not red flags for others. But you also mentioned crumble. And crumble is a cookie that has gone viral and I feel like had this sort of rocket ship of success when it comes to really owning the premium cookie market, which also demonstrates that there very much is one. Could you help me unpack what happened with crumble and like potentially some learnings that this company could take from that?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of similarities here. Crumble kind of proved the concept that some people are willing to pay
a lot
more than like $1 or $2 for a single cookie. There is a market for this. When we look at Crumble, so it started in 2017 as like this brick and mortar, and they were really focused on having the consumer and the customer be a part of every step of the journey. So you could see like from creation to actually like purchasing the cookie.
Yeah.
They were on the hunt for like the perfect recipe for chocolate chip cookies. And they shared that with their consumers. So they're like, hey, try this, or they would take feedback. So they opened up that feedback loop, which I think really set the foundation for them. Obviously, you know, when social media became more of a presence for them, on TikTok, they have almost 7 million followers. Mm-hmm. So I think the fact that they had such a strong tie-in to their community and their customer, paired with the fact that they had a very minimal aesthetic when it came to like cookie packaging. Mm-hmm. It's the iconic pink box.
Yeah, it's very vibe.
There's only a few boxes we know that are iconic. The Tiffany blue box and the crumble pink box.
There's only two.
There's only two in my world. One's a little more cost affordable than the other.
Cookies and diamonds.
Exactly. So the fact that they had this very clean, simplistic, like visual, highly recognizable branding, I think really helped, because you saw that after, you know, Crumble was gaining more notoriety on social media, there were accounts that were being created just to review Crumble cookies. It goes back to instilling that relationship and building that early on with your community and customers over time just leads to natural advocacy, which leads to a lot of organic boost. So I think Crumble really did pave the way for like high quality ingredients. It's good tasting. They're very upfront. They never try to be a good for you product, which I think, you know, works out really well for them. So add on the fact that Nowhere Bakery is allergy free, paleo, all these other like actual semi-health benefits. I think they could take a page from a similar book. Their visual identity is like super appetizing and really appealing. I'm not the biggest fan of the name, but I feel like we had this trend for a while in like cooking classes or like sur la table, these like vague names that's like artsy kind of approach for like baked goods. So like I don't think it's entirely out of nowhere, but there's definitely a disconnect.
What would you call your paleo cookie line if you had to make one, if you had to brand it right now?
I can't. I'm trying to think of like alliteration.
I would call it -5.
Oh, that's so good.
Like, what are those 5 ingredients that like you don't have to ever worry about, right? And then I would connect it to that, because that connects the dots between like what your mission is and then somehow tie like what your core value add is. Because I do think that brand names to a certain extent do need to promote value. Yeah. Yes. And I think that like, because this is definitely a specific market, drilling into that a little bit more would have been my sort of approach. Granted, they're going to keep their branding, but that's how I would have started to position my paleo cookie company.
I love that. It was giving KFC's 13 secret spices.
Yes,
yes,
right?
Bit, but I like that.
Something to highlight, maybe even on the packaging with the slogan, like those 5 things, you don't even have to worry about it, kid. And then to just like tie that to the cause.
I would go totally just hard pivot just to be disruptive. And I would just call it like brownies and not serve like any brownies at all.
Wait, I love that. To just be like,
and it's the unexpected. And you learn to expect the unexpected in your cookie. Like you shouldn't have to deal with allergic reactions.
Yeah, I like that kind of bold branding, right? Get the user involved. Just call it paleo.
Just with a period afterwards or a little accent over like the E or O. And then
an umlaut.
Yes.
Love that. So we found delight in the naming. The Sharks were a little bit on the fence with this. One thing that Mark started to touch on, you brought up a little bit with the pseudo health benefits, is like these are very high in calories. So I love it. I looked at their packaging because I was just like curious, and they do their calories based on halves. So it's like they'll tell you how many calories they have based on like half a cookie
or half a brownie. Favorite labels. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So like, granted, it's not really tricking you because it says it right there, but then you have to double everything you're seeing. And suddenly those numbers get a little bit more scary. So it was 320 calories per cookie, and they're not huge. And then brownies, it was like 360 calories. And again, everyone has a different threshold of like what they are willing to put in their body, and that's totally fine. But it definitely caused Mark to bulk, which then caused me to bulk because I was like, wait, how much? What is this cookie?
Yeah, it's a very indulgent cookie.
But at the same time, I don't think it's like a big problem because I don't think anyone's really expecting cookies and brownies to be particularly healthy for you. I think the point of them here is just to not have additional factors that might hurt people with food allergies. So I saw that as like a bit of an issue, maybe not as big of an issue as Mark was making it. Jason and Kevin had similar issues. Kevin did offer them a deal, just put that on the ground. But Kevin and Jason sort of teamed up and they wanted to take a completely different pivot. They were like, so all of these cookies right now are being made in an industrial kitchen by our founder. And they think that this founder should go to a co-packer and really reduce their costs. Mm-hmm. Barbara thinks they should do something entirely different. She's like, I've seen this go down before.
Barbara went rogue in this part.
Yeah. And she was like, and actually, the company I've worked for went to a co-packer, hated it, went back to their own industrial kitchen.
That. Don't scare the founders into making your decision.
Yeah, exactly. But she was like, trust me with this.
Yeah.
So she also offered a deal. Ultimately, I think the founders were really concerned when it came to like quality control of their ingredients, which also, to your point, makes a lot of sense if part of their audience is really worried about like cross-contamination or like specific ingredients. So I do sort of see it from their angle.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I do think the scare tactic won out just a little bit because she offered them $100,000 and a $100,000 credit line for 15%. They tried to counter, went back and forth a little bit. They ultimately went down to that same offer for 12.5%.
Good deal.
Barbara thought it was a deal. Yeah, I know. And honestly, it's a bit bigger than the 5% they were asking for, but not like egregiously so. So ultimately, Shark Tank deal sealed with Barbara, sealed with a cookie. And yeah, our founders at Nowhere Bakery walked away with a Shark Tank deal of $100,000 and a $100,000 credit line for 12.5%. Yay!
Good for them.
Good for them.
It's good to see them not wanting to compromise on the value of their like product and goods for the sake of like making more sales. It's always reassuring to see.
Always good to
company
see.
Do that.
I will ask, as you are a bit of this persona for this cookie company, are you going to buy them now?
You know, I looked at the price.
See? Okay, so you're just not in the premium cookie market, which is totally fair.
I mean, maybe I would order this to like gift it to someone as like, thinking of you, like getting you some cookies. But for myself, I think like eating healthier wise and prioritizing that, I need to be a little more conscious of where my calories are coming from. And I can't justify having like 600 calories for one cookie or two. I can't just eat one.
No empty calories for you. Mark totally agrees with you, right? Because he was like, I'd eat this cookie and then go have to work out in the gym for 17 hours. So like, it's a lot.
Now, if you're buying the mix for like a kid's birthday party or something, or, you know,
which
like,
they do sell the mix on their site, right?
Yeah.
And that's a little bit more cost effective to buy if you're interested.
I think my threshold for $1 per cookie is like $3.
$3.
What about yours? Maybe like $3.25 inflation. I don't know.
Yeah. It depends on how hungry I am and how bad my sweet tooth is. I would say max I'd be willing to pay for cookies, probably $4. But in that case, I'm probably not buying more than 4.
Yeah.
I feel like under $20 for a cookie acquisition.
For a set of cookies. It can't just be for a single price per unit.
Right. That makes sense to me. Anything above that, I don't know if I could justify it.
I agree with you. We're in the same range of like reasonable.
Look at us. We're the same persona. And I would be open to like trying things that are like paleo friendly. It's not a driving concern of mine, but you know, if the marketing was good enough, I suppose I'd give it a try.
Yeah.
I'm prone to buying things off of Shark Tank, so maybe, but not for this price point. Production for today's episode was brought to you by Arie Desormeaux. Editing comes from Robert Hartwig and support from Alfred Schulz. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or wherever you subscribe to the greatest podcasts ever. That does it for me. See you next week in the tank for another bite.